Alright, good afternoon folks. So these videos are going to be intended to help you figure out how to do symbolizations, given that we haven't done symbolizing and translations in this class yet, but you're going to be tested on it on your final exam. So the symbolizations that you're seeing here are a little bit more simplistic than the ones that you're going to see on the exam, but this is intended to be a foundational and a starting point for learning and understanding how to translate more or less sentences, arguments, etc. into symbols that we can then analyze. I uploaded this video earlier, but it turned out that the quality was garbage, so I'm going to redo it with a little bit more of a zooming focus. That way we can see kind of some of the moves that are being done. And I'm going to color code things as we go. So the approach to being able to translate things is to first find any of the operators. In this case, we have an unless. Unless translates as an or, and then to underline the rest of the components, which include the clouds will fail, and then it rains. And then above those, we should write the letters that are represented by it. So the clouds will fail is represented by C, and then it rains is represented by R. There's no negations in this sentence, so then we can just translate this as C, wedge, R. We're going to do the same thing for sentence 2. So we notice that we have an if. So that means everything after the if, all of that stuff, is going to be in the antecedent. It also means that everything before the if is actually going to be our consequent. Then we underline it. Humans or animals is an A. They, humans, are mammals is an M. And then we have to remember to switch the sides. Since it says if they are mammals, then they are animals. If you forget to switch the sides, then you'll be saying something that's not actually correct. So like if we had written down A arrow M, this is wrong. Because the sentence isn't saying that if something is an animal, then it's a mammal. It's saying that if something is a mammal, then it is an animal. Moving on to 3, we see the statement, and then we see these little quotations. That means that all this stuff inside the quotations should be inside parentheses. So let's go ahead and do that part first. So we see an if humans are relational, then they are not animals. And we also have a not. Nots get translated with a negation. So if humans are relational, are, then they are animals. A. So let's go ahead and write that part down. If are, then not A, and put it into parentheses. And then we look outside the parentheses and we ask, what do we see there? We see that the statement, are arrow not A, is false. So then we know to add a negation in front of all of this. Going on to 4, we're going to do the same thing. First, we're going to identify any negations and also what the main operator is. So we see bats are mammals only if, and only if is not the same as if. Only if means that you have an arrow and that it's representing more or less something like something is a penguin. There's a penguin. Only if is a bird. In contrast, if is representing the antecedent. And that usually means that you have to switch it with whatever came first. So here we have bats are mammals, M, only if they, bats, nourish their young with milk, N. So this would be written as M, arrow, N. Going on to 5, we see coffee isn't good. So this is a negation if it isn't freshly brewed. And here, kind of like what I said earlier, since the if is not an only if, that means that we're going to be putting this side first and then this side second, because this is the antecedent and this is the consequent. Then let's underline the parts. Coffee is good. G. If it, coffee, is freshly brewed. F. So if coffee is not freshly brewed, then it's not the case that it's good coffee. This is also the same as saying that if coffee is good, then it must be the case that it was freshly brewed. Going on to 6, we see something that's a little bit odd. So we see an assuming that. Assuming that means that we're talking about the antecedent. is something that's going to lead to something else. We also see that we have an and. So assuming that your test scores are high and you get your paper in on time, so both of these things are going to be anded together, then is implied you will do well. And we don't have any negations here. So assuming that your test scores are high, that's a T. You get your paper in on time, that's a P. Then you will do well, it's a W. Putting it all together, assuming that both your test scores are high and you get your paper in on time, then it follows that you would do well. For 7, we see a lax. Lax is going to be a negation here because for our symbolism down here, we see that R stands for Roberto has wisdom, not Roberto lacks wisdom. So Roberto has wisdom is R, which means we're going to translate this as not R. And then we get to 8. 8 has quotations, which means everything here is going to be in parentheses. Notice that we have a false outside. And then lack is going to be a negation. And then humans have rationality is H. And we know that we would translate the humans lack rationality as negation H, since down here, that's what our key is saying. So first we're going to do the inside of the parentheses, not H, and then is false. So the statement, humans lack rationality, is a false statement. Now, one of the things I've seen some folks try to do is write this, where they make it explicit that they're negating a statement by adding in that parentheses. That's not right. For us, you can't put parentheses in between two negations. So it has to be like this instead. So when we consider all of these things, the reason that we symbolize arguments in this way is so that we can actually focus on the structure of the argument instead of the content. And in this video and then the next few ones, I'm going to just be looking at more or less statements, propositions, arguments that don't have anything that's an existential X, a universal X, or a relation. These are going to be on the exam. However, you're not going to know how and be able to translate those types of propositions and those types of statements unless you're comfortable doing everything we just did here. Identifying the main operator, identifying negations, identifying the pieces in the statements and how to represent them with letters, in this case single atomic letters, and also knowing when to switch certain sides. So for example, in 2, knowing that the if they are mammals will come first in a conditional statement. Or in sentences like 4, knowing that only if is not the same as if, and an only if is just translated as an arrow. In the next video, I'll continue to do the next few pages.